Mohammed Yunus, founder of the Grameen Bank, he had once said that my greatest challenge has been to change the mindset of people. Mindsets play strange tricks on us. We see things the way our minds have instructed our eyes to see.
Yep.
In previous interviews, you have spoken openly about the path or the expectation that's set forward for any Nepali man. You've mentioned that today as well. They expect to be doctors or engineers, and then there's a future for them in Qatar, Saudi, or Dubai. You've also mentioned that at any point in your own journey, whether at Venezuela, whether in Maine, whether at Shrosman, if you had come back home empty handed, you would have been viewed as a failure. And you have mentioned that the Nepali culture doesn't celebrate failure. I want to tie this in with everything you just spoke about, the mindset that people have around education as well. Have you found it difficult to change the perspective of people? Have you found a psychological barrier to change the mindset of people in the work that you're doing? Was it hard for you to convince people to get on board? Or did you find that people were immediately on board with the idea and there was a path of least resistance for you?
I think the final part is what I expected.
Right.
when I jumped on this journey. 2015 when I returned back to Nepal, and I wanted to embark on this journey, and I was like very pumped up. I thought people would embrace me very easily. They'd be like, "Oh, he's here. He's one of ours. He wants to do such good thing to us, to our kids." It would have, I was like, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
I was wrong. I was very wrong. That's when I asked myself, why the hell did I come back to this country? I had an opportunity to continue in a private enterprise in the US, and I decided against it and said, I will change the landscape of primary education in Nepal with support from the beneficiary people. Going back as a recent graduate, I was literally asked to question everything I believed. And honestly, I think, after 9 months of continuous struggle in the villages that I was trying to work with, I sort of realized why they were the way they were. So just to give you a story, first school I went to build, I was pumped up. I told the community, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. This is going to bring this change, that change.
Yeah.
The community in the outset definitely said, yay, we're excited. Then when it came to the day of actually doing the job, which is our model is built on a collaboration. So I don't go in and do all the investments. I don't go in and build it. And that's something I was very adamant on. This first school taught me, because they say, yay, yes, we'll support you, doesn't necessarily mean they support you. It's a very big cultural thing that is connected to trust. And back then, I studied a politician who had never done anything in the village. In the whole district, he had never done anything. So he had been a member of parliament for that district continuously in the past 10 years. And the highway that led up to the village during the rainy season would be non-existent. We would have to go on tractors to actually get to the village because they were 4x4. Despite that, the village continued to vote for this MP. And me, who's coming in and saying, I actually want to work with you to build a school for your children, for this community. They were not really very serious about it. They didn't necessarily trust that I would be delivering. Yeah. I was very offended in the first instance. I was like, I lived a whole life and I came to you. You should be working with me.
Yeah.
No, it really, and that was my village, by the way. Like literally, I would say my village because it's really very close to where I was born. I thought they would own me. They would be like, we're proud of this dude. Now, here's the politics of it. My family had seen me returning back to Nepal as a failure. Because anybody in the US, Nepali, that would return back would be mad to return back to Nepal. People go head over heels to get their visas and come to the US. Whereas here was me. It's basically like, nah, I know US is great, brilliant, but Nepal needs me and I think I can do something great there and I want to go back. Damn, my family literally, here's the thing, in social context like Nepal, your family either tends to make you or break you. In my case, it would be sort of moving towards breaking me. Returning back, not my mom, but like my greater family, right? Returning back, they basically were like, I failed in the US and the US kicked me out, and then I returned back and I tried to show off that I could do stuff. And that's the story that was circulated to the villagers, right? The fact that, they shouldn't trust me because I was an outsider was already being floated. And I was an outsider. I didn't live and breathe their ideas, their ideals, their lifestyle. Back then when I was a kid, I did, but having had that gap of approximately 16 years at 22, I was no longer living and breathing their dreams. I was merely an outsider thinking of what we could accomplish together. I had to spend time understanding these people, understanding my roots. And so that particular school that I wanted to build took me 11 months to get started. And coming from a US education background, where I had promised to my first supporter that I would build the school in 4 months and enroll 200 children, I was literally in my 11th month and I hadn't started. Now, the accountability piece on my donor side was I was communicating constantly, but my own frustration of coming from an education background, being educated abroad, I was taught that if the bandwagon didn't move and you tried enough, then you should abandon the idea and move on to a newer idea. For some reason, something didn't really move. Let me move on. I knew I could get the trust that they were not having in me. So I spent my last 5 months of the 11 months living in the village, literally going from door to door, scouting land to build the school. And in my 11th month, I got everybody together and I said, listen, I'm here. This is us. Nothing has happened so far. Your children have lost 1 year worth of life. They could literally be having a greater life. It's either we do it or we don't do it. And if we're not doing it, I need to pack my bags and leave. I sort of understood that I had gained their trust and I had understood them enough to tell that. And that's where they came on board with me. And I had I had everybody on board. And the school took me 3 months to build. Right? So it was right on spot, but it was all about spending that time with them to understand the culture, the setting, the kind of mindset they had. The fact that these people had never been to school, that's where I had to start. I went to school and I could tell my ideas. I didn't think that when I went back. I had expected that they would just understand me instantly, which never is the case, because if you thought of it, and this is what I've had, the most humbling experiences have been looking through somebody else's perspective. I went in there thinking I was a savior, but I was literally told, they were telling me, we can't really trust you. And they were telling that very politician that had never done anything, that we can actually trust you, because he was there when they needed them the most, is actually physically present. Not really doing much, but physically present. The promises he made were false. They did know that. But that sense of security coming from an illiterate background, from a literate person, he could literally make that happen. Right? At times when there are problems, he would try to make a phone call and solve issues. And that's how he gained the trust. Now, in my own case, I was an outsider. I didn't have a proven track of working with them. I didn't have a proven track of being one of theirs. And I also had a family, or in general, people talking about me thinking I was a failure. So it all added to my negative sense. It does take a lot of effort, but once you've gained one community trust, you can be assured that the rest of the district and the country is going to be behind you. It's just that first legwork that really takes the effort. And if you really mean good for them, you don't tell them it's good for you. It's good for us is where you start. It's about the us part. And honestly, I don't think it's been a very smooth ride, despite having gained that amazing trust from the communities. If you think of it, the government is its own group. There are vested interests from political parties. The communities can easily be manipulated. And so the complex environment that South Asia, and specifically Nepal, India, they work in, from caste system to class system to political party to religious ideology to whatnot, right? These are the spaces that one person wanting to implement different ideas has to go through.
Right.
And I think for me, at least in the recent times, there's a bigger backing from all the communities we work with. So we work with approximately 200 and some communities. And so tomorrow, if there's an issue in any sort of, the organizational terms, or if there's hindrance from the government, then I am assured and I have the trust and the backing of these communities that they will actually stand up for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so it took time to gain that trust. It took time to bring them on board that we can actually transform education, and that it is in collaboration with government, but it doesn't have to be led by the government. Like, that took time. And winning the government on board, that's another round of challenge, because as an outsider being educated in the US, going back, thinking my thought process would be the way to lead the country was wrong. I had to contextualize. I had to understand how the government worked. I spent 7 months going to one office that approved, charities to work in Nepal. So I was hoping to bring money from the US, the UK, and in order to get that approval, I had to go to this thing called Social Welfare Council. 7 months, every single day I went. And I was frustrated going to it, but I went like it was a religious thing every day, right? And that's where I learned to pull strings, find the right people, understand that system in Nepal is very different than systems in the West or systems in countries where you have a larger literate population. So that the decision makers were already in a position of power. And in order to work with me, they had to realize, and I had to know, that they were in position of power and that I was coming to work with them, but under their guidance. So it was not like, yeah, sure, I was educated in the West. Maybe I knew more of economics. Maybe I knew of business. Maybe I knew what kind of education we wanted. But one thing these government officials made me realize was, I can know all the things in the world and I can be the expert of everything, but I'm not the decision maker. And so this is where I put on a collaborative hat. And 7 months on, realized that, I was going to collaborate and not, lead it on my own and be an arrogant person. So my whole experience of bringing the community together, the government, trying to build up this trust, really broke me down. It broke me into pieces, but it took time for me to put myself up. Patience, perseverance, and definitely living to understand what these people actually feel and understand is critical to gaining that trust. And even to date, the likely chance of the trust being broken and them not having trust on me is higher than them looking back and thinking, he actually did a great job, right? If that makes sense. So it is not how far you've come in the journey. It's where are you in the present? And the likely chance of all of these things falling apart is higher, because a literate population can decide on his own, a literate population can decide on her own and process information and bring out a collective narrative. But in a country like mine, where rural areas, politics is in the roots of the families, in the communities, and then politics is easily manipulative, educated population is very rare, young population is not there, the likely chance that these people will not decide on their own is higher. And so that collective relationship we continue to have, my relationship with all the communities, has to be kept and has to be sane and has to be updated and maintained in order for this journey of complete transformation in education to happen. Even to date, I can completely say it could fall apart anytime.